We're going to get to some birds right now. Kathleen and Jim Tigan are the owners of, get this, Tactical Avian Predators. How'd you like to have a business that name? That is awesome. Tactical Avian Predators, a West Coast-based business that offers integrated pest management strategy of ecologically sound pest control that uses falconry, habitat manipulation, and human techniques to eradicate pest birds, raccoons, skunks, and other pests. So it's been described, this biological control technique. This is a biological, when we're talking about using falcons particularly, has been called an elegant solution to pest control. That is, it really is an elegant solution to pest control. Jim Tigan has said that what they do, and I'm going to let Kathleen talk to you about this, but it really, what they do by using the falcon is raising the environmental stress to move birds, make birds move around us. So without stealing any of their thunder, because the thunder's coming up here, and I can't do any of that. And I tell you what, Kathleen is going to get to it, and then we're going to get right into some raptors. We got Corey Dalton with a Harris hawk. We got Coulter Reinerson with a red-tailed hawk, and they might have some other birds here too. Is it possible that we can get another microphone too, please? That would be great. Please help me welcome Kathleen Tigan.
Sorry about that.
Thank you all. As he mentioned, my name is Kathleen, and my husband and I do actually own a company called Tactical Avian Predators, and nobody knows what that is. So when we're driving through town and we have the company sign on the door, people sneak up next to us, and they think we're wearing like black jammies and gonna do some ninja type things. But what we do is bird control. We're a green certified pest control company, and what we do is use trained birds of prey to get rid of pest species. So it's very environmentally sound. Excuse me for one moment. And this is one of our employees. She works pretty cheap, but she's a little bit sassy. This is Jaja. Jaja is a peregrine falcon. The peregrine falcon is the fastest animal on the planet. They're in the Guinness Book of World Records for being in a dive at 242 miles an hour. So what we're going to do here is, we're all falconers. I'm going to talk just a few more moments about Jaja. There were two sections, but we've decided we were the ones in the back corner over there making all the noise. So we're going to combine the two sections. I'm going to talk for a few minutes, and then I'm going to introduce the gentleman with me, and we'll take a few questions. And then afterwards, we will stand with the birds if you would like to ask us questions or take pictures and have a little bit more casual time together. So I'll tell you very quickly what we do. When we do bird abatement, I'll use wine grapes as a for instance. We're primarily chasing starlings out of the vineyards. And those starlings can come in groups of a few thousand. And the reason that this works is that falcons generally hunt other flying species. They hunt other birds, and when they hunt those birds, they hunt them in flight, on the wing. So they're hunting up off of the ground, very different from the other 4 birds we have up here. So when we're hired to work in a vineyard, we're actually not hunting those birds. It's more of a simulated hunt. We're just pretending with those starlings, Jaja, she thinks she's hunting those birds, and those birds think that they're being hunted. Occasionally there's an incidental take, but not very often. So we're just using Mother Nature kind of against herself. When we do abatement, we work sun up to sundown, 7 days a week, 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks at a time until the harvest is complete. So it can be quite a long day. And we generally work with a team of birds, 3 or 4 falcons. Each of us have our own birds that we fly. They become accustomed to working with one person in the style that they work in. So enough about that. And I'll take one whole question, and then I'm going to introduce Corey. So who's the one lucky person? Nobody? How old is she? She's 6 years old. That was an easy one. So this is Corey Dalton. And Corey has...
She's older than 6. My name is Corey. Some of you probably recognize me. I try and come to this every year with Lou and Colt to give you guys some cool birds to see. This is my bird Tanis. He's a male Harris hawk. He's going to be 4 in a couple of months. I chase a lot of ground prairie with him, a lot of rabbits. I actually have a couple of ranches if I ever get out far enough to Erington and stuff where people have invited me to come out and try and help get rid of some of their jackrabbits that eat all their alfalfa and hay and destabilize like large haystacks. So that's always a fun time. He's pretty friendly. He flies in a group. I've flown with Coulter a couple times last season and once this season. And these birds are pretty fun because they actually all hunt in large groups called casts. And he's born in captivity, unlike Ed's bird there that you'll see here in a couple minutes. He's pretty super friendly. He's, like I said, primarily a ground chaser. He's very adamant when he wants to catch a jackrabbit or something. Sometimes he gets a little vocal, but he's doing okay right now. I guess I could wait for people to see if they wanted to have any questions for me for him. Just trying to kind of let Ed talk in a minute. Anybody have a question for me? Yeah.
How long does it take to train birds?
I had him trained in about 2.5 weeks when I first got him. He was born in captivity though, so wild birds can take a little bit longer. And the other part of that is every bird has a different personality. So some take longer, like I've had a red-tail that took a month. I've had other Harris hawks that took close to a month. They all have their own little personality and their own little quirks, but once they realize that you're a food source and you're not trying to hurt them in any way, it's pretty easy from there. But Ed here, who's next, he had probably a whole different experience when he first got his bird, because his bird was in the wild having a grand old time and was probably 5 or 6 months old when he got him. And I'll let Ed talk about his red tail here.
So the next person we're going to introduce is Ed, and Ed has a female red tail with him. This bird was brought in. Ed is actually what we call an apprentice, so he's learning the art of falconry. It's quite a process. It's very well regulated by the federal and state governments, and this is a bird that he traps, so you can ask him questions about training a wild-caught bird. So this is Ed.
Hi there, I am Ed, as she said, several times now. This is an unnamed bird at the moment. I've had her, that's why she hasn't taken any game yet. I've had her for just over 2 months now, and she is my second red tail and a completely different experience from the first one. The first one I had trained to hunt in about 3 weeks. And she took about 3 weeks before she would even jump to my fist. So that took an additional 3 weeks from there. So like Corey said, every bird's different personality, different experience for us and for the bird. So As she mentioned, I am an apprentice, so that's a 2-year program minimum that is mandatory before you can become a falconer. And I just started my 2nd year, so I'm halfway there. When you're out driving around these valleys, this is most likely the bird you will see probably 9 out of 10 times. There's just a lot of them around, but unfortunately, most of them that you see don't even make it through their 1st year of life. So part of my goal is to make her a more successful hunter and then release her to the wild so that she can breed and raise her young to hunt more successfully. Any questions?
Where do you get them from the wild? Or how do you do it?
We get them from any telephone pole or fence pole. Well, the first thing that we look for when we're trapping is, as you can see, she doesn't have a red tail yet. So the red tail birds in their 1st year of life have a striped tail that's brown and white or brown and black, depending on the morph of bird. So the first thing we do is look for a 1st year bird, because that's all we're allowed to trap, so that we don't interrupt the breeding cycle of another pair. Then we have different methods of trapping. All of them involve a mouse or a bird of some sort of prey for the animal, and it's got to be in a scenario where it won't get hurt, according to the state regulations. So we've got traps that have fishing line nooses on the top. We've got traps that will spring closed, net style traps on them, and then we get the bird as fast as we can off the trap so it doesn't hurt itself.
So we see it on the side of the road, leave them alone.
So when you trap, it's not like other trapping. You're there with your trap. You don't leave it unattended. It's your responsibility to get your hands on that bird and get it secure and safe immediately. Pass that back to me.
No, well, I wanted to be able to hear you.
I have a very loud voice. Those microphones freak me out.
Any other questions? That's it.
In the wild, do they mate for life?
Most birds do. I don't know if red tails do or not.
A lot of the birds do. I oftentimes call it a marriage of convenience. And what I mean by that is these birds live very solitary lives for the most part. The only time that they come together is during the breeding season. So this time of the year, they're coming back to a territory. If they were successful, the same male and female will generally come back to that same area and raise a family. So if they have a nesting area by March 1st, by the end of by mid-April, they lay eggs. 30 to 45 days later, those eggs hatch. Within about 45-ish days, the birds are fully feathered. And they're hunting. They're learning how to hunt with their parents. And then the parents teach them how to hunt for a few months. The parents chase them out of that breeding ground. And then the female goes down to Cabo and the male goes down to Florida. And then February rolls around and he has to romance her again and show her that he's going to be a good husband and provider. So it's a very convenient marriage that they have.
And
Probably
they
80% do.
And they will stay together as long as one of the birds does not die in the wild. But mating for life, if one does die, the other one doesn't pine away.
And sometimes it's, depending on the birds, I don't remember from school, it's the female that retains the nest and she has to find a new male, and sometimes it's the male that retains it and has to find a new female, but I don't know which is which. But I'd say about 80% come back to the same place and have families again. So next we have Lou, and Lou has a super cool bird that's in the accipiter family. There are 3 accipiters that we have in our area: the sharp-shinned hawk, the Cooper's hawk, and the goshawk. And Lou has the biggest of the 3. We call these forest birds. So anytime I do an education program and somebody says, I have a bird feeder and this red-tailed hawk keeps coming in and eating everything, we say, no, that's a accipiter. So they're the very fast, fun-flying birds. So ask Lou some really hard questions. He loves it. Would you like real shy?
Thank you, Kathleen.
Anyway, like Kathleen said, my name is Lou Souter. First time I did Eagles Nag was back in 2007. Vina. She was a brown bird then. It was her first year, and it was pretty awesome. Yeah, and let me see. So this is 7 years, 8 years. We've only missed one, but so Vina's always been here, so it's pretty cool. Anyway, like Kathleen said, Vina is a goshawk. She is captive bred. She is an accipiter. In falconry, we identified our falconry birds in three main categories. There are short wings. The falcon that Kathleen had is considered a long wing, and Ed's red tail is what we call a broad wing. The short wing, like this goshawk, is more of a forest bird. They're very more, I guess you could say, more maneuverable because they're used to flying through the forest, through the trees. They have a longer tail, which helps them bank around objects and such. Has anybody ever seen the video that's on the internet? It's pretty common. It was going around a lot about shows a goshawk or a hawk flying through a small opening. Has everybody seen that? Yeah, pretty cool. And at first they started out with a hole, then they changed the shape, made it a square, a rectangle, and they made the goshawk fly through a little clear tube. It was amazing how they can just maneuver and contort their bodies to fit through little areas. But anyway, so I think the next person up we have Coulter. Coulter is actually Ed's sponsor, and he was my apprentice. So here's Coulter with his aerosol.
Hello, this is Zane. He's also a Harris Hawk, but there's not much to say that Corey didn't say. So he also likes to fly in packs with other Harris Hawks. Anybody have any questions?
You have a variety of hawks here that all have different habitats, but you do predator control in a vineyard. A goshawk that loves a forest, would he go to a vineyard?
You wouldn't generally do abatement with a goshawk. Some people do more in Europe, but they don't have the same disposition as some of the other birds. So just because you have a bird that likes a certain type of climate doesn't mean that that's the only place that you can do abatement with it. Because when we do abatement, we're there with the bird. So we basically control a simulated hunt in a location of our choosing, a vineyard, blueberries, cherries. There are many, many locations that are undesirable to do abatement, and it's because of windows, power lines, traffic, things like that would be dangerous to fly a bird in free flight. So all of the birds that we're sharing with you today are all fully flighted, trained birds. They're not rehabilitated birds, so they're all able to hunt on their own as well.
There's a question over there.
Yes, sir.
Will non-related Harris's hawks totem when they're hunting?
Will non-related Harris hawks stack when they're hunting?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It's just a behavior that they have. Some may like it, some may not. So, oh, does everybody know what stacking is?
National Geographic has a really good photo.
Harris hawks are probably the most popular bird used in falconry today because they have some very unique behaviors, and one of the most unique behaviors that they have is they hunt communally. Falconers often refer to them as the wolves of the sky, and the reason we do is because they hunt like a pack of wolves. They communicate, they watch each other, they learn how to hunt as a group, and one of the cool things that they do is when you're hunting, height is always the best. When you're hunting in the desert, which is where they're from, there's not very many perches. So you'll oftentimes see on a big saguaro cactus, big female lands, braces on the stickers. Another one will come and land, will stand on its back like this. See how this bird naturally accepts this?
The goshawk, if she had the hood off, she would not let
She
you.
would reach around and, yeah, if you do that, you'll get attacked. So it's a natural behavior that they have. So they naturally stack.
think National Geographic one has 4 of them stacked up. Yeah. He didn't like it too much. One tried to do it to him. He thought it was trying to jump on it, so he turned around and it got interesting.
I wanted to mention that tomorrow some of the guys are doing some demonstrations. Corey's going to be flying a something or other, a hybrid falcon to a drone. It's one of the new ways that we've learned to teach our falcons to go up high and take a nice pitch. So he's going to be doing that, and Colton and Ed are going to be doing something somewhere. Yes, ma'am.
Are all of these birds indigenous to their area, this area, and if they're not, could you tell us where they come from?
All of the birds that you're looking at are all native to North America.
To this area?
But not to Nevada.
Goshawk is and the red-tailed elk. So this bird is and the cold as well.
This bird likes the hot desert. They really don't like cold weather around here. I've taken my birds out with Lou in the morning, and I let Lou fly first because if I take my bird out that early, he'll fly back to the car and wait for me to put him away. They don't like the cold. But like in the summer, if you were to freeze a flower pot of water and turn it upside down next to a perch for a goshawk, it'll actually sit on the ice block. They're totally different. But this bird only lives in a few states in the U.S. They live in Arizona, Texas, and New Mexico. And they've recently started to become seen in southern Nevada because the climate down there is changing and becoming favorable. But this bird, he gets in the wintertime, I have a heat lamp, and he'll sit under it at night for hours and hours and hours. They just don't like the cold weather. So we have to be very cautious around here with Harris hawks with cold weather. Like little Tweety birds have more body fat in their cells than Harris hawks do. But like that red tail, she wouldn't care. You could put her outside at 10 degrees, you'd be fine. You could come out and a Harris hawk could be dead. They just do not like cold weather. So around here, it's a little more tricky to try and keep Harris hawks. And like my wife's very tolerant, I usually have 3 of them in my dining room at once. But I think, yeah, Lou's got another story here. Hold on.
Really interesting. Goshawks are native to Nevada, but typically you would find them in high mountain areas, lots of trees. I had a really cool story. Most of the falconers that I fly with, they all have goshawks. One day we were meeting at Woodette's Diner in the middle of, I believe it's Gardnerville, not Minden, having breakfast. And this one falconer that was with us, he had his 12-year-old son. And just about as we sat down for breakfast, Dustin jumped up and said, "A goshawk just flew across the parking lot." And all the other guys jumped up. I sat in my chair like I know, goshawks don't occur in Gardnerville, right? But anyway, they ran out. They couldn't find the hawk. But Dustin was sure. His dad had goshawks all his life, had a really powerful wing beat. It definitely wasn't a Cooper's hawk, which is the hawk that I thought it was. It was a passage goshawk. Well, I didn't believe him. So anyway, a whole year goes by, okay? And I'm driving home from work. It was an overcast day. It was in the winter. All the leaves were off the trees. And just like pretty much all falconers do, I'm not just watching the road. I'm looking up in the trees and, just checking out hawks and stuff. And I see a raptor in a big cottonwood. And as I'm driving by, I noticed that this raptor has a pretty long tail. And it caught my attention enough to where I did a U-turn, went back and drove right up underneath a female passage goshawk sitting in a cottonwood, directly across the street from Woodette's Diner. There you go. So yeah, normally you wouldn't see these birds hanging out on telephone poles, but they do occur. Passage. Explain passage for me.
So falconers have created their own language over the years. It's a very ancient sport, so we have lots of funny words like creance and passage and haggard, and there's 2 that we refer to. There's a passage and a haggard. A passage is a first-year bird. The red tail is a passage bird. And a haggard, which we shorten to hag, is a mature bird. And when they're passage birds, Lou mentioned earlier, I don't know if anybody heard him say it was a brown bird. And when we call birds a brown bird, it also means it's a first-year bird. Mother Nature gave these birds a little gift, and in a raptor's first year, they're actually 10% larger than their adult parents. And the reason for that is that their plumage is slightly longer, and the feathers of that plumage are brown and much softer, because believe it or not, we're so used to seeing these beautiful, majestic birds flying and landing so gracefully wherever they want, but in that first year they're really quite uncoordinated, and they crash into trees and they bump into things and they just bang themselves up. They only molt once a year, and if they damage these feathers, then they're left to rely on what they have, and sometimes they can't hunt. So it's wonderful that Ed here is working with this red tail, who probably would not be able to hunt with a tail like that. So she'll molt out and look beautiful, but young, immature birds, a passage has a soft brown feather to it, and they're actually larger. So we have one more bird to share. Any questions before I take out the one scratching in the box? Yes, ma'am. All the time. Only the long wing.
They have telemetry on.
We fly telemetry on the birds, but yes, there's always these are birds that we're working with to do what they do, and there's always the potential for them to not want to do exactly what it is that you want them to do. And it could be, I tell people, just because you see your bird doesn't mean you get your bird back, because it could be sitting on the top of a telephone pole just staring at you, bobbing its head, thinking, what are you going to do for me? So it can be somewhat frustrating and heartbreaking for doing what we do. So, but it happens sometimes, but yeah, the long wings are a little bit more spicy, as you mentioned.
Somebody once told me that the only thing that's changed in falconry in 4,000 years, like you haven't done anything somebody hasn't done somewhere in history, is radio telemetry, and I think that's absolutely true. You can think you've done some unique training method, trapping method, hunting method. Somebody somewhere in the world in 4,000 years has done it, and the only thing that's changed is like Colt's got his on his bird is this radio tracking equipment that we use to go find them. Because if you get a peregrine chasing a pigeon and they're doing 60 or 70 or 80 miles an hour in the air, they forgot about you, and they'll cover a mile like that and go over some rise or into some housing development, and now you gotta go find them. And telemetry has really changed our ability to get them back. Some of these birds, like Coulter and I, probably couldn't lose these birds if we absolutely had to. Because that's the unique thing. I think that's a part of the popularity of Harris hawks is they literally will you and a dog or two other Harris hawks as part of their family, and they just stay with you. Like they just follow you like a dog, or they ride around on a perch, or they ride on your fist. But the falcon, once the chase is on, or a goshawk, you're out of the picture. That's it. The Harris hawk waits for you like, oh, hey, you should be kicking up more rabbits for me. Totally different. I got all kinds of friends, and they've lost all kinds of long wings. So.